We say good morning to Barry Svrluga. He's checking in live from Augusta. Of course, he's a Washington Post columnist. Barry, good morning. How are you? Coming live from Augusta.
Great, guys. Appreciate you having me on my way to the course.
Of course. What a sweet gig. Have you covered it several times throughout your career?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, more than a dozen. I don't know the exact number.
Right.
Yes.
Do you stay in the same spot every year?
You'll appreciate this. We used to, like when I first did it, which I think was 2009, I stumbled into my slot in the house of John Feinstein, Tom Boswell, this legendary guy, Dave Kindred, that you guys may or may not know.
Sure.
I was
sure.
The youngest guy by 15 years, and these legends were getting up and making coffee in the morning. It was just totally bizarre to me.
Right.
So you still do that same sort of thing, or are you just flying solo a bunch of years later?
I have a house with my buddy and colleague, Rick Mace, and our friend Mike Rosenberg from Sports Illustrated. Got a new house that we hope becomes permanent from this year going forward.
Nice. I've always told the guys, I don't think any of the other guys have been. I've only been there once, but it is kind of shocking that you're driving down what appears to be Route 1 in Laurel, and then obviously you look over, and then behind
heaven.
Behind the gate or whatever is heaven. Yeah.
It's totally, I mean, that Washington Road stretch from the highway to the course is borderline disgusting. A Hooters and a T-bone steakhouse that looks like it was built in about 1971 and hasn't been touched up since. It's totally strange.
There might be a bonefish there. Is there a bonefish there?
There's definitely a bonefish.
Yeah.
There's an Outback.
Yeah.
You name it. There's P.F. Chang's is probably too high end for that.
Right. It's really bizarre. You are just struck by now. Barry's used to it, but you go in there and there's literally not a weed on the property. It's just it's so lush, it's so green, it's so gorgeous. Have there been any dramatic changes this year? I haven't actually followed that.
So the only changes were not planned. I shouldn't say the only ones. There are 4 new greens that you would never know were new greens.
Right.
But the not planned changes were from the hurricane that went through Augusta. I don't remember when it was, last fall. And so there are, I wouldn't notice it, but the guys have said, to the left of 10, there were some really tall pines that kind of made you had to shape the ball right to left. But now you can, if you wanted to, you can take it more directly down the left side, right of where Rory hit it all those years ago, deep into the cabins. But there's a couple of different targets and different sight lines, but I've been walking around. I haven't noticed anything different.
Right.
All right. So what are you kind of focusing on? Obviously, Rory and Scheffler are the big stories, and Rory probably being the biggest one. But what are you kind of focusing on from a media standpoint?
So today I'm going to do something a little bizarre or off kilter. You can't have your phone out there, and that includes media. So I'm going to go out there from say 7:30 to, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the afternoon and just write about a day without your phone, which when was the last time you were without your phone for 8 hours? They have banks of not even pay phones. They're free phones that you can call people from, which is also kind of feels antiquated and funny, but you also think, do you know anybody's number? I'm going to have to write down.
Yeah, that's tough.
Dan Steinberg, my editor's number, to check in at noon and make sure the world hasn't collapsed. So that's just a little kind of offbeat thing I'm going to do. You're right, Jason, about the focus. Every year it feels like everybody's this is the year for Rory, and now you've got trigger mechanisms to guard against that because you've just been let down so much. But it feels like he's playing so well. He's so good that it feels like it's got to happen for it sometime, and it would just be not just a relief for Rory, but a relief for the golf world that's kind of behind him, and we'll like to see him do it. And it's the career Grand Slam, and he's such a good player. I feel like he's a bigger storyline than Scheffler, who's definitely number 2. But in a tireless world, it's not obvious what the other ones would be. You're a golf fan, you know what it would be like if Justin Thomas is in the mix and what it would mean to him, or Spieth came back after, really battling all the wrist stuff and showed his form again. But I don't think those storylines transcend the sport. The Masters does itself, but there's not a lot of characters that break through and are big. I think Rory's really the kind of a club of one, unless like Phil got it together and made a charge or something.
What's kind of weird is Colin Morikawa with his comments. I don't think he meant to, but he's kind of taken a heel turn. He seemed like such a likable guy, and I don't blame him for feeling like he shouldn't have to talk every time. But maybe it's just he's been a little stubborn about the whole thing. Where do you stand on Colin, who seems to be in good form, and he could definitely be a contender?
He definitely could. I have always had the philosophy that guys have the right not to talk, once or twice or, on the odd time when, sometimes saying nothing says more than whatever dribble they would say in the moment. I don't love that, like, Rory didn't talk after the U.S. Open last year and then, appeared a couple weeks later. Like, I think that's not good form. But I think as long as the behavior doesn't become like a habit and standard practice for a person, a one-off not talking is like, it's not a crime against humanity in my book.
Right.
So it also, I mean, frankly, like, I don't want to be the whining media that like, oh, you didn't talk to me. Like you can say a lot by, in your disappointment. If you don't talk, I don't think he needs to, like, on the other side, I don't think he needs to dig his heels in and be like, well, I'm not talking because that's, I don't have to. Like,
right.
I think one time is no problem.
It's funny. He actually made a great point. He's like, I didn't even want to talk to my wife. Like, I gave her a hug and then I went in the locker room.
Yeah.
And because, that's how sometimes you deal with disappointment. It's totally normal.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's totally normal. And I mean, Rory was asked about it the other day, and he pointed out that in the NBA and the NFL and Major League Baseball, like, it's written into their CBA, like, here are media times. You have to talk to the media. You're the quarterback. You have to talk to the media once during the week and after the game, et cetera, et cetera. PGA Tour doesn't have those rules until and unless they have those rules, then guys have the right to decline.
What about
I will say, though, let me just add, like, Tiger has this reputation of being, like, kind of short with the media, and it's well, or not really expansive, and that's probably well earned. He never blew off people after a round, after a loss. The only times he didn't talk were, late in his career. The many times he withdrew in the middle of a round, and it was a health thing. But for all the, like, oh, he was no good with the media, he talked before a tournament every time and after every round he ever played.
He was pretty professional about that. I agree. What about some of the live guys? Seems like, they don't seem any closer in any sort of agreement. But a lot of the drama, at least, seems to be kind of subsided. The guys get along, whatever it is, what it is. But it's hard to know if any of these guys are informed. They don't particularly seem to be.
It's just hard to know. Like, with that format and with a schedule that's pretty herky-jerky, and, I don't know about you, Eric, but I wasn't, like, getting up to watch Live Singapore to check out Brooks's form.
Right.
So, like, I think the guy who probably is playing the best there is Joaquin Niemann, like, has the most consistent results over the last year. But the focus is going to be on Rahm and DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka. Those are got to be the three biggest live stars. They've all won majors. They're all still somewhat in the prime of their careers. Cam Smith, I don't know what to make of him either. Like, you don't have the normal, we know Rory won at Pebble and Rory won the Players. Like, we know what those tournaments are. We know who he beat. We know what that means. Even if, the guy who won the most recent live tournament, Mark Leishman, like, he's not even here. So I just don't know how you get a handle on where they're at. And today will be a gauge of that. If those guys end up in the mix.
Barry, do you have the same disdain and venom for the par 3 tournament that Junks producer Matt Valdez has? He just wants it wiped off the face of the planet.
I'm stealing Alan Shipnook's take. It's not my take.
Right.
But fine. I agree with Alan.
I will say that I didn't and don't really have a ton of use for it. And in fact, until yesterday, I had never seen a shot of it. I was always, like, working on Wednesday afternoon or whatever, and just I wasn't going to take the time, frankly, to go over and do that. But I went yesterday for an hour, and one, it was like not quite as crowded as I thought. And then I don't know, Valdez, if your thing is like, I don't need to see like Jordan Spieth's kid hit a shot like 50 feet down a tiny 90-yard hole fairway. But once you got out there and saw the guys like tugging their toddlers around, it was like, I don't really want to say it was cute, but it was not bad. I was not offended. And if the guys want to do it, and the fans, they get a huge kick out of it. You're a little closer to the players than you are on the regular course. And it's just so relaxed that I have a different take than I would have had 24 hours ago than when I might have agreed with you.
Are you guys covering? I'm sure you're gonna have somebody. The guy that won the mid amateur, Evan Beck.
So Rick
from DC.
He wrote about him going into. He wrote a story I think Tuesday about him. Caught up with him. The guy was like, "This is just totally surreal. Like I can't get my head around it." And he also was like, he kind of was aware I need to get some rest here, but I also can't stop playing golf on this course.
Right.
He played the par 3 yesterday, which he should have. You're in the Masters for probably the only time in your life. Drink every bit of it in. He got to do the amateur dinner with Fred Ridley on, I think that was Monday night. He stayed in the Crow's Nest on Sunday night. You're a 34-year-old office worker in D.C. who played golf at Wake Forest and gave up your dreams of being pro to just work a career, and you end up in the Masters. Take every single bit of you can in.
Yeah, so cool, such a cool story. I hope you go out there and just put up some decent numbers.
Very cool story. Yeah. So are you there pretty much from start to finish? I mean, tee time start at 7:40, and then I assume you're there all the way through, and then going to the press room after all the big name guys are done their rounds.
Yeah, so they won't bring people into the press room unless somebody hangs up a 65, 60. If there's an obvious, this guy's going to be near the lead. And they have, Eric, you said you've been here. There's this massive oak tree on the course side of the clubhouse. And as the guys are going to scoring to the left of this is the son of Augusta National is this oak tree. I'll meet you by the tree at 2 p.m. because you can't text people. Anyway, the media stuff is they have microphones set up off to the side there, and that's where we get most of the guys as they're done with their round.
All right, do you want to give us a pick?
Yeah, do you like it?
It's the hardest thing to do is to pick somebody.
I'm such a moron, and I get emotionally tied up with this. I'm a big Rory fan, and I think part of it is, I covered his first major win at Congressional, which came after the collapse at the Masters. And I just thought that response was so professional as a 21-year-old and said a lot about him. And, he had 4 majors by the end of 2014. It's 11 years later, and he doesn't have another. But he's the best player in the world if Scotty's not quite as sharp, and he hasn't been quite as sharp. So I know it's foolish, but I just feel like Rory's the best player right now. Rory's going to finally win the Masters.
Wow. All right, there we go.
Barry, Valdez is desperate to know what's your favorite hole at Augusta.
I'm sure he's desperate to know.
He is.
He wants you to name it, though. He wants you to say Azalea.
I have Magnolia. I have no idea what Magnolia is.
That's 5.
See, he knows.
He just wants to flex.
5 is not my favorite hole, so it's not Magnolia.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, good.
No, I'm not. I'm genuinely curious.
Do you have one that from a vantage point or anything that you like or spot?
Well, I mean, 13 and 15, I think, are the most exciting holes. It's really hard to see 15 if you're not standing there all day. It's hard to get a vantage point, but there's so much excitement in those holes, even though those guys are hitting 8-iron in on a par 5. I'll take either of those two.
All right, then you got to try the tomato pie, right? Have you tried that yet?
Wow, no, I haven't.
All right, they're saying
apparently that's the new thing on the menu.
Yeah, get me a gnome. I need a gnome.
Yeah, I'll stand in line for 80 minutes to get you a gnome.
Good response, Barry.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks
Appreciate
for checking
it.
in, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys.